Imagine standing alone beneath a canopy of ancient pines in the heart of Vermont. The air is cool, damp, and heavy with the scent of moss. The forest around you is utterly still. No birds, no rustling leaves, just silence. And then you notice something. The trail behind you is gone, as if it was never there at all. In this moment, you begin to understand why locals call this place the Whispering Woods. Because here, people don't just get lost, they vanish, as if the forest itself swallows them whole. Tonight, we're going to journey deep into that darkness together. This isn't just a story about missing persons. It's about a stretch of wild land that has defied explanation for generations, where folklore bleeds into fact, and where the line between this world and something older becomes unsettlingly thin. Welcome to Whispers of the Forest, the Unsolved Vanishings, right here on Hidden Verdict. Tucked into the northeastern corner of the United States, Vermont is known today for its postcard beauty. Rolling green hills, red barns, autumn leaves that burn the mountains in gold and crimson. But beneath that charm lies a rugged, untamed wilderness. The western spine of the state is carved by the Green Mountains, a range that has stood watch for nearly 500 million years. Between their peaks lie deep forests, cold streams, and stretches of land where the nearest human soul may be miles away. And in the southern part of the state, between the towns of Bennington, Glastonbury, Woodford, and Shaftesbury, lies a region that old-timers whisper about. Cartographers have marked it on maps, hikers have traced its trails. But locals, especially those whose families have lived here for centuries, know it by another name, the Bennington Triangle. It's in these dense woodlands that, between 1945 and 1950, at least 5 people disappeared. Completely. No bodies, no tracks, no evidence. Just gone. But to understand why this area carries such an unsettling reputation, we have to go back, far back, long before highways or trail markers or the word triangle was ever used. For thousands of years, this land belonged to the Abenaki people, part of the larger Wabanaki Confederacy. They lived in harmony with the seasons, moving with the migrations of deer and moose, fishing the cold rivers, gathering berries, and telling stories around their fires. To the Abenaki, these mountains were alive. Every ridge, every hollow had a spirit. Some were friendly, protective. Others were dangerous. One of the oldest legends speaks of Hozo, the self-creator, a being who formed the land itself and then turned to stone. His body became the mountains. His spirit lingered in the rocks, watching, sometimes guiding, sometimes punishing those who disrespected the forest. There's another tale, whispered even among the elders, about the Stone People. They were said to live deep within the earth, emerging only under the cover of fog, luring hunters away with strange lights and voices. Anyone who followed those voices, the legend warned, would never be seen again. The Abenaki also believed parts of the forest were taboo places, places where the boundary between the living world and the spirit world was thin. No hunting, no camping, no loud talk. Those who ignored the warnings sometimes never returned. When European settlers arrived in the 1700s, they heard fragments of these stories, but dismissed them as superstition. Still, even they found something unsettling about the southern Vermont woods. One 19th century settler journal described it as a place where sound goes to die. Nestled within this eerie region was the small logging and mining town of Glastonbury. In the late 1800s, Glastonbury was briefly a bustling settlement. Timber mills buzzed, charcoal pits smoked, and miners chipped away at the earth. But by the early 1900s, the forests had been stripped bare, the soil exhausted, and the town withered. Floods washed out the logging roads, the railroads stopped running. By 1930, Glastonbury was a ghost town, reclaimed by the forest. Only a handful of people remained, scattered in crumbling cabins. And it was here, in this forgotten wilderness, that something strange began to stir again in the 1940s. Our story of vanishings begins on a crisp November day in 1945 when a 74-year-old hunter named Mitty Rivers set out with a group of hunters near Hell Hollow, close to Glastonbury Mountain. Mitty knew these woods better than anyone. He was their guide, the one people trusted to lead them home. As the party made their way back down a ridge, Mitty walked a little ahead. And then he was gone, just gone. The group thought he had taken a shortcut back to camp, but he never arrived. Search teams scoured the forest for weeks. They found nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no scent trail for the dogs. It was as though the forest had simply swallowed him. Just a year later, in December 1946, an 18-year-old college student named Paula Jean Weldon left her dorm at Bennington College and told her roommate she was going for a walk. Witnesses saw her heading onto the long trail near Glastonbury Mountain, wearing a bright red coat. That coat should have made her easy to spot against the snow-dusted trees, but she never came back. Hundreds of volunteers, state police, even the FBI joined the search. Airplanes scanned the ridges. Bloodhounds tracked her scent until, abruptly, it vanished on a lonely stretch of trail. Not a single shred of her clothing or belongings has ever been found. In October 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson disappeared from his family's farm near Bennington. His mother had left him playing outside for just an hour. When she returned, he was gone. The family's pigs were still penned. His small red jacket was never recovered. Bloodhounds traced his scent to a nearby highway. Then nothing. Some said he had wandered into the woods. Others whispered that something had come out of the woods for him. Only 16 days later, 53-year-old Freda Langer vanished while hiking with her cousin near Somerset Reservoir. She slipped into a shallow stream, soaked her clothes, and said she would run back to camp to change. The path was straightforward. She knew it well, but she never arrived. Massive search efforts followed. Planes, soldiers, volunteers. Months passed. Then, in May 1951, her body was discovered in an open area that searchers had scoured repeatedly. No cause of death could be determined. It was as if the forest had briefly let her go, just to remind everyone it was watching. Between these, another man, James Tedford, vanished in December 1949, not from the woods themselves, but from a moving bus traveling through Bennington. Witnesses saw him on board, but when the bus reached its final stop, his seat was empty. His belongings were still above him on the luggage rack. He had simply ceased to be. 5 people, 5 disappearances, all within about 30 miles, all within 5 years, and not a trace left behind.
By the early 1950s, newspapers were calling this eerie patch of forest the Bennington Triangle. Reporters hinted at a curse. Locals lowered their voices when discussing it. Hikers stopped venturing alone onto the long trail. The name stuck, and so did the fear. But here's what's especially chilling. These weren't the first vanishings. Old town records mention other mysterious disappearances going back to the 1800s. Loggers who never returned, hunters who left camp for firewood and didn't come back, even stagecoach passengers who reported strange lights in the hills and voices in the fog. It seemed this land had always been hungry.
Even those who didn't vanish spoke of strange experiences. Hunters described hearing soft, disembodied whispers that would suddenly stop when they called out. Hikers reported being followed, the crunch of footsteps always just behind, though no one was there. Others told of bizarre compass failures, as if some unseen magnetic force scrambled their bearings. One local woodsman swore that he watched a man walking ahead of him on the trail simply fade into the trees like mist. Search parties spoke of sudden patches of unnatural silence. No birds, no wind, no sound, just an oppressive stillness that made their skin crawl. And then there were the lights. Flickering blue or white orbs seemed drifting between the trees at night. Skeptics call them swamp gas or reflections. The Abenaki had another word for them, wobanakik, spirit lights, said to be messengers from the other side. The stories all share one thing. When the lights appear, someone soon goes missing. Picture it, a campfire flickering low, the black forest pressing in from all sides. Somewhere out there, a branch snaps. The hair on the back of your neck stands up, and you remember 5 people stepped into these woods and never returned. And that's just where our journey begins. Because next, we're going to explore the possible explanations. Did a hidden killer stalk these forests? Were these vanishings accidents of nature claimed by the merciless wilderness? Or was something far older and darker at work? Now, when 5 people vanish in the same area over just a few years, the human mind looks for patterns. We want order, logic, something to pin it on. So naturally, one of the first theories whispered about in the aftermath was that a killer was lurking in the Bennington Triangle, a predator who knew the land and could disappear as easily as their victims. And when you think about it, the pieces could almost fit. Take Paula Jean Weldon, an attractive young college student walking alone along the Long Trail near Glastonbury Mountain. She was last seen speaking to an older man who gave directions, then continued walking north. If someone had been stalking the trails, someone who lived off the land, it wouldn't be hard to follow her unseen. The thick pines could swallow sound. A single mistake, one quick grab, a muffled scream, and she could have been dragged off the trail in seconds, hidden where no search party could find her. Then there's Frida Langer. She vanished in broad daylight, just a short distance from her cousin. If she had been attacked, it had to have been fast. And her body's eventual reappearance months later in a spot that had been heavily searched raised unsettling questions. Did someone place her there after the fact? And what about James Tedford vanishing from a moving bus? That one, if you squint, could even hint at an accomplice, someone who lured him off during a brief stop, someone who knew how to vanish before anyone noticed.
Local gossip in the late 1940s and early 1950s began to murmur about a hermit in the hills, an unnamed man, possibly a deserter from World War II, who supposedly lived off stolen livestock and moved through the forest like a ghost. Searchers never found him. Some insist he was just a rumor created to explain the fear, but others still swear they saw strange campfire smoke curling from the distant ridges, even when no one was supposed to be out there. And that raises a chilling thought. What if there was someone out there, living feral and forgotten, who knew the secret hollows and caves of these mountains? Someone who could watch unseen and strike without warning.
But the killer theory, while tempting, has cracks. For one, no physical evidence ever pointed to human foul play. No blood, no torn clothing, no signs of a struggle. Even the most careful killer leaves traces, especially when the searches were as massive as they were for Paula or Freda. And if there truly had been a serial killer haunting these woods, why stop? After 1950, the vanishings abruptly ceased. No one else vanished in the same way. Killers rarely just stop. They either get caught or they escalate. The sudden silence almost suggests the opposite of human behavior. It suggests the forest simply closed its mouth again. Another, more rational theory is that nature itself claimed the missing. The Green Mountains are breathtaking, but they're also ruthless. Dense spruce and hemlock create a labyrinth of look-alike trees that can disorient even seasoned hikers. The terrain drops off in sudden cliffs, plunging ravines, and hidden sinkholes. Streams cut deep into the earth, carving invisible crevices beneath the moss. A misstep out here can be fatal and silent. A single fall down a rock chute could hide a body from searchers forever. Snow, rain, and leaf litter can erase tracks within hours. Even search dogs can lose scent trails when strong mountain winds scatter particles. Wildlife poses its own dangers. Black bears roam these hills, as do bobcats and coyotes. While attacks on humans are rare, a body left in the wild is swiftly claimed by scavengers. In just days, all trace can disappear beneath the forest floor as roots, moss, and time quietly erase the story. Searchers often say the forest here has a way of closing behind you. Step off trail, and within minutes it's like you were never there at all. And yet, even this theory leaves something unsettling unanswered. Nature leaves clues, scraps of clothing, a boot, bones. But with Mitty Rivers, Paula Weldon, Paul Jepson, and James Tedford, nothing was ever found. It's as though the land didn't just hide them, it erased them. And that brings us to the theory that refuses to die, that something not of this world haunts the Bennington Triangle. Locals have whispered about it for centuries. The Abenaki spoke of taboo places on Glastonbury Mountain where the veil between worlds was thin. Hunters reported hearing voices calling their names from the mist, only to find no one there. And always there are the lights, cold, floating spheres that drift silently between the trees. Some say these are the Abenaki spirit lights. Others claim they're will-o'-the-wisps, luring travelers off the path. Modern hikers have reported sudden feelings of being watched, followed, or even pushed, as though invisible hands prodded them off the trail. And then there's the land itself. Compass needles spin near the mountain summit. Radios crackle and die. Experienced search teams have wandered in circles for hours, even with maps and GPS. It's as though the mountain rearranges itself, confusing intruders. Could there be geomagnetic anomalies beneath the mountain? Some suggest buried deposits of magnetite or iron could cause strange compass behavior and disorientation. Others whisper about portals, time slips, or even interdimensional rifts. That the missing didn't die. They simply slipped out of our world. It sounds far-fetched, but when you stand alone in those silent woods, surrounded by miles of shadow, the line between science and superstition blurs fast. Let's walk through them again, one by one, with these theories in mind. Mitty Rivers, 1945. A seasoned woodsman, knew the trails better than anyone, vanished while leading a hunting party. Crime? Unlikely. He was armed and experienced. Nature? Possible. He could have fallen into a hidden crevice. Paranormal? Dogs lost his scent instantly, which is strange. No trace ever found, despite huge searches. Paula Jean Weldon, 1946. A young hiker on the long trail, red coat, vanished in daylight. Crime? Plausible. She was alone, potentially stalked. Nature? She could have wandered off and succumbed to exposure. Paranormal? Her scent stopped cold on the trail, as though she evaporated. James Tedford, 1949. Vanished from a moving bus, belongings untouched. Crime? Hard to see how. Witnesses saw him, then he was gone mid-route. Nature? Doesn't apply. He wasn't even in the woods. Paranormal? His case is the strangest. It's as if he blinked out of reality. Paul Jepson, 1950, 8 years old, playing near his family's farm. Crime? Possible. Abduction from the road. Nature? He might have wandered into the forest and gotten lost. Paranormal? Dogs followed his scent to a road, then it stopped cold, like he stepped into thin air. Frida Langer, 1950, vanished near Somerset Reservoir. Her body found months later in a previously searched area. Crime? Maybe. Someone could have hidden her and later returned the body. Nature? Could have fallen, died, and been missed, though that's hard to believe given the search coverage. Paranormal? The forest seemed to give her back after holding her. Disturbing either way. Each case has its own logic and its own impossibilities. Over the years, experts have tried to make sense of it. Search and rescue veterans note how quickly the Vermont wilderness reclaims the lost. One experienced ranger once said, "Out here, if you sit down off-trail and stay quiet, you'll vanish from sight in under 2 minutes." It's a sobering truth. On the other hand, geologists point to strange magnetic readings around Glastonbury Mountain, though not strong enough to be fully explained. A few fringe physicists have even speculated about localized gravitational anomalies, tiny warps in space-time that could disorient people or cause strange disappearances. Mainstream science scoffs, of course, but the rumors persist. Paranormal researchers see the Bennington Triangle as a window area, a hotspot for unexplained phenomena, like the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts or the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. They note clusters of UFO sightings, strange lights, and mysterious sounds reported in the area, especially in the mid-20th century. And through it all, one truth keeps echoing. Something about this land refuses to give up its secrets. Late at night, when the wind sighs through the Green Mountains, locals say it almost sounds like whispering voices, soft, mournful, like echoes of those who never returned. You can laugh it off until you're standing there alone, the dark pressing close, the silence wrapping around you like a shroud. It's then you begin to understand why old Abenaki hunters never lingered here after sundown. They believed the mountain was alive and hungry. We've explored the theories, human killers, nature's cruelty, and forces beyond understanding. But to truly grasp this mystery, we need to go deeper still. We need to look at the people who've tried to solve it, the searchers, the psychics, the skeptics, and the believers, and how their efforts over the decades have only made the mystery grow. Because the forest hasn't stopped whispering, and even now, long after the disappearances ended, it's still calling people in. When the first disappearances rattled the towns around Glastonbury Mountain, no one was prepared for what came next. The night Mitty Rivers vanished in 1945, the community responded fast. This was their land, and Mitty was one of their own. Dozens of hunters scoured the ravines by lantern light, calling his name into the black woods. Search parties swept through the forest for weeks, crisscrossing the same ridges and gullies over and over. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a shred of his clothing. For seasoned backwoodsmen, it was maddening. One search captain later told a local paper, it was like chasing a shadow that didn't want to be caught. And when Paula Jean Weldon went missing the following winter, the scale of the search grew beyond anything the quiet hills of Bennington had ever seen. Hundreds of college students and townsfolk volunteered. The Vermont State Police led teams with bloodhounds. Even the FBI sent agents to aid in what became one of the most extensive searches in Vermont history. Planes circled overhead. Maps were marked and remarked. Trails swept over and over. Logs turned. Streams dredged. And yet, silence. The forest gave them nothing. Rescuers spoke of the woods as if they were resisting the search. One volunteer later recalled how the forest seemed to swallow sound, how shouts and whistles went nowhere, muffled into stillness. Another searcher described seeing her own boot prints vanish behind her, as leaves seemed to rearrange themselves, as though the mountain was quietly erasing their efforts. Locals began to say the mountain was keeping secrets. By the time James Tedford vanished from that bus in 1949, the region's reputation had transformed. The newspapers called it the Bennington Triangle, a term that stuck like burrs to wool. It gave shape to the fear. It made the land itself the villain. Parents warned children not to wander after dark. Hikers began carrying compasses, knives, and sometimes even guns when venturing into the hills. And still, the disappearances continued. Paul Jepson in 1950, and just days later, Freda Langer. Searches for them were massive too, hundreds combing the woods, boats scanning the waters of Somerset Reservoir, even divers braving the icy currents. For Freda, months passed before her body surfaced in an area that had been searched. It made no sense. It still doesn't. By the early 1950s, the idea of the Bennington Triangle had taken root in the American imagination. Journalists described the land as bewitched, hungry, or cursed. Stories spread far beyond Vermont. People compared it to the Bermuda Triangle, another place where people vanished without explanation. Even after the disappearances stopped, hikers spoke of strange feelings, sudden dread, overwhelming silence, the sense of invisible eyes watching. And the legends of the Abenaki people resurfaced. Elders spoke quietly of forbidden places on Glastonbury Mountain where their ancestors would never set camp. They said the mountain was a crossing place, a thin place where the spirit world brushed close to ours and where humans were not meant to linger. Even those who scoffed at superstition found themselves glancing over their shoulders on those lonely trails. In the decades that followed, as interest in the paranormal and true crime grew in America, the Bennington Triangle became a magnet for investigators. During the 1970s and 1980s, paranormal researchers visited the ruins of Glastonbury, now little more than moss-covered stone foundations swallowed by the forest. Some brought EMF meters, others carried tape recorders, hoping to capture voices in the static. A few claimed to record strange whispers, low, overlapping voices speaking in no known language, fading in and out like the wind. Skeptics called it wind or animals, but those who heard it under their headphones described it with pale faces. It didn't sound like wind, it sounded like arguing. In the 1990s, geologists tested the soil around Glastonbury Mountain and found unusual magnetic anomalies in certain ridges, slight but real. Their instruments spun and jittered, compasses misbehaved. Theories sprouted like mushrooms, iron deposits, ancient meteorite fragments, even subterranean lightning strikes that altered the rocks. Whatever the cause, something beneath the mountain seemed to bend the rules of direction. And in a place where disorientation can be fatal, that might be all it takes. In the 2000s, as technology advanced, modern search teams returned to the Bennington Triangle with GPS trackers, thermal drones, and ground-penetrating radar. They hoped to solve at least one of the old mysteries, especially the disappearance of Paula Jean Weldon, which still haunted the region. They mapped every known cave and sinkhole. They scoured aerial imagery. They traced the long trail foot by foot. Nothing. No bone, no fabric, no watch or boot or hair clip. Even with 21st century tools, the forest remained silent. It was as though it had swallowed the missing whole and kept them. Some turned to more unconventional methods. Psychics, mediums, dowsers. In the 1970s, one psychic claimed she saw a red flash and dark water when she held a photo of Paula Weldon. Another described a deep crack in the earth and cold hands pulling. Law enforcement politely listened, then ignored the visions. But families, desperate for closure, sometimes followed these leads deep into the woods. They came back with nothing except a heavier sense of the forest's watchful quiet. One local who joined a psychic-led search later said, "It felt like the mountain was laughing at us." Meanwhile, scholars of Abenaki folklore began noticing something eerie. Many of the sites where people vanished correspond to ancient taboo zones in Abenaki oral tradition, spots their ancestors avoided for generations. The Abenaki spoke of Odzi Hozo, the self-creator who shaped the land and then turned to stone, his spirit roaming the mountains. They also warned of the stone people, mysterious beings who lured hunters away with voices and lights. Sound familiar? The disappearances around Glastonbury Mountain seem to echo these warnings. Even the spirit lights, called Wobanakik, matched modern sightings of drifting orbs. It's as if the land itself had been whispering its danger for centuries, and we just didn't listen. Today, the Bennington Triangle is quiet again.
The forest has grown thick and lush over the ruins of Glastonbury. Ferns carpet the old rail beds. Birch trees crack through stone cellars. But the legend remains. Hikers still speak in low voices about the feeling, that sudden drop in temperature, that watchful silence, that sensation of being weighed. Some scoff, others won't go there at all. Tourists come in autumn, snapping photos of orange leaves and covered bridges, unaware that they stand in a place where the earth once opened its mouth and took 5 souls. For the families, the pain never faded. The parents of Paula Jean Weldon spent years searching, following every rumor and tip. Her father lobbied the state to create the Vermont State Police, which didn't exist at the time she vanished. In a tragic way, her disappearance reshaped law enforcement in Vermont forever. The family of Paul Jepson moved away quietly. Locals said his mother never stopped scanning the woods when she passed them, as if expecting to see a flash of her son's red jacket between the trees. And Freda Langer, even though her body was found, the mystery of how she died and how she reappeared tormented her loved ones. Some of her relatives stopped hiking entirely. Others left Vermont altogether. The forest claimed more than the missing. It claimed the peace of those left behind. Over the years, the Bennington Triangle has become part of American folklore. It's been the subject of documentaries, ghost hunting shows, books, and even podcasts. Writers use it as a setting for horror stories. True crime enthusiasts dissect it on forums late into the night. It appears in lists alongside the Bridgewater Triangle, the Skinwalker Ranch, and other mysterious window areas. And yet, for all the fascination, the heart of the mystery remains stubbornly unsolved. We've seen how the disappearances shattered families, spurred massive searches, and gave birth to a legend. But the question lingers like a shadow beneath the pines. Why did it stop? If something stalked the woods, did it leave? If the forest took those souls, why did it go quiet? And could it happen again? Because the mountain is still there, the woods are still deep and dark, and every year new hikers step on to the long trail, unaware of what happened here. Maybe the forest is just waiting.